All right, it is now time for us to complain about Noi and Steve with a little extra emphasis on the Noi because she is just driving me up the wall this season. And like the deeper we get into this, the more ridiculous that she gets, in my opinion. Is Steve the perfect husband? Absolutely not. But to me, the root of their issues all come from Noi. Anybody notice that the first sentence out of Noi's mouth when she met with Pastor Cal, completely a lie? This is like just like a scene after her establishing like that she needs to have like more healthy communication and honesty. Goes to meet with Pastor Cal. First thing out of her mouth is a lie. And then as soon as things get difficult with Pastor Cal, her body language shifts very, very obviously. Like she's can't handle criticism. She can't handle being told she's wrong. She can't handle the hard conversations. And it's just becoming more and more apparent as the season goes on. She says all these things that are wrong about Steve, that she doesn't like about Steve, that Steve needs to change, but she can't even handle having those conversations with him because as soon as things stop going the way she wants, like she just starts to shut down. She checks out. You can see her body language, the way, like, watch how she looks at Steve, or, better yet, doesn't look at Steve when they're talking about something difficult. Like the majority of the time, she's like got her body fully turned away. Like not even like looking at him and like being having the eyes a little downcast. She's fully body, everything turned away, checked out. And the whole fixation on Steve getting a job is getting a little out of control. She's concerned about how he's going to provide for her and her children. There's no two-way street here. There's never a discussion about what Noi is going to contribute to their relationship, what Noi is going to contribute to the household, to the family, to any of that. And like at this point, she is just so full of BS. They have started the conversation about his job, his money, all of that. They've started it, but the moment that it goes away from exactly what Noi wants, the conversations come to a close. She doesn't get that answer that she wants, so the conversation is over. And the meeting with the experts, how did we get through all that and not bring up Noi not wanting to live with Steve after decision day? Like that should be like one of the biggest red flags and biggest concerns that Steve has when he goes for that sit down with Dr. Pepper. Wasn't even mentioned, wasn't even brought up. And like it's like borderline deal breaker. Like if my wife is like, hey, I think our relationship is great, but I'm gonna move out, I'm not just gonna be like, okay, that seems pretty normal to me. I'm gonna read that as, something's wrong here. If my wife doesn't want to live with me, doesn't want to be around me, like that's like there are things going on. But like wasn't even brought up. And then they come back together and, became very clear to me, Noi is just not a good person. She's only on this planet for one person and one person only, and that is Noi. She had that whole comment about, but it's my social media. If I'm doing something on social media, or even like in these videos that I do, and my wife says like, hey, I didn't like that you did that, I don't think that you should do that, I'm gonna stop. Like there's no but it's my social media. Like I'm gonna stop, I'm gonna change. That doesn't mean that I'm just gonna shut down everything I do on social media because I did one thing that my wife didn't like, but I'm going to change and not do that one thing anymore. Or to the best of my ability, change and not do that one thing. And Noi, her attitude, her everything just screams very selfish, very immature, And, a part of that conversation, she was saying, hey, I see your perspective and would like you to know I don't care. I've heard you, and I would like you to know that I don't care about what you just said. I don't care about your feelings. Me, 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 me. I know exactly what I want, and I usually get it. Those are the words of a spoiled brat. We've gone over and over about how Noi grew up poor, how her family struggled growing up, and yet she's here as an adult acting like a absolute spoiled brat who's never heard no in her life. And like the two just don't match up when you factor in all the lies we've heard from Noi. Like, what is the truth? What was her childhood really like? Maybe they grew up poor, but she always got her way. And just becoming a little bit too much for me. Like the whole time, mentioned about the body language earlier, but she can barely even look at Steve while they're having this conversation. That should be a very serious conversation, in my opinion, but apparently when things don't go Noi's way, she is out. Steve, he opened the floor to talk about their financial future, and Noi just kind of, I don't even know what happened in that conversation. He had the spreadsheets out, he was budgeting for diapers, he was budgeting for different scenarios, and like as soon as Steve is like, hey, I could get a full-time job, or I could potentially freelance and do some entrepreneurial stuff and potentially make more money. Like as soon as it veered away from you having a 9-to-5 job, she was checked out of that conversation. Like these two, they had the solution in their hand and just directly just threw it on the ground. Like Steve prepped everything to have this conversation. They're talking about bank accounts, this and that, and we end the conversation, and Noi's just like, yeah, well, we'll see when Steve has a plan. I'm like, what? Like you had it all laid out on the table, and you just walked away. And honestly, how have they not had this conversation at this point? They've been together about 6 weeks, 6 very intense weeks. Like that's not your regular 6 weeks of dating. That's much, much more intense, much more in depth. And they absolutely 1000% should have had all these conversations already. And all these conversations end up being about how Steve can support Noi and never about how Noi can support Steve. It's always the one way. It's always the one way to appease the spoiled brat. One last thing for them is apparently Noi wants to have a kid within the year, which, it takes 9 months. So they've got a 3-month window here now to get pregnant in order to have a baby within the year. And, I just don't understand how she can be saying that right on the heels of this conversation about money that accomplished nothing. A week removed from her not even wanting to live with Steve after decision day. But, whatever, time to throw out those condoms because we got to get number 1 of number 3 banged out this year. That's where we're going to leave things for Noi and Steve. I do not like Noi. She might be my least favorite person on this whole season. That's right. Everybody else on this season, Noi might be my least favorite. But as always, everybody, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, we will see you later.